It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Fred J. Olivi, who was a young, very young second lieutenant during the end of World War II, volunteered for aviation cadet training in 1942, and was called active duty in 1943. He eventually became part of the 509th Composite Group, 393rd Bomb Squadron, flying B-29s in January of 1945. And he, along with many other people, volunteered for a mission, the nature of which they really didn't even know what it was, to tell you the truth. All they knew is everyone in it was a volunteer, and they'll explain that to you. And of course, as you read in the bulletin, he was Lieutenant Colonel Levy was the co-pilot on the B-29 boxcar. And it was not a mixed spelling. It is spelled B-O-C-K-S-C-A-R. And that was the plane that dropped the second nuclear weapon of World War II. It was dropped on people on Nagasaki in Japan, August 9th, 1945, which brought about a very, very swift conclusion. The first, of course, at Hiroshima, and the second at Nagasaki, the conclusion of World War II. Fred stayed on active duty until 1947. Then he went into the Air Force Reserve. He'll give you maybe a little bit of his background. He worked for, I believe, the city of Chicago, wasn't for a number of years after. But he stayed in the Air Force Reserve until 1972 when he retired, and he flew C-114s and C-46s at the time. It's my pleasure to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Fred J. Olivi.
When you get old, you get slow. I'd like to say I'm glad here tonight to see this big crowd, and I hope what you're going to see is going to be a 20-minute film showing the loading of the two bombs on the Enola Gay, the boxcar, the ones we delivered to Japan in August 9th of 1945, and I've got pictures back there. You can see what they look like too, but you'll see them here in the movie. And I'm sure today that we've got some that are a lot smaller, but a lot stronger. And ours, in comparison, would be like two firecrackers today, because they've advanced them so much. But we were the latest state of the art at the time, and we were the first, and we had problems. At least on our mission, we had problems. On the Hiroshima mission, Colonel Tibbets didn't have any problems. He hit the primary target, came back, no problems. With us, we nearly ran out of gas. We nearly were engulfed by the mushroom cloud, which was radioactive. And had that been happened, I wouldn't be here telling the story today. And then in landing in Okinawa, because of our restricted gas supply, we couldn't go back to Tinian. We nearly had a crash landing there too. So anyway, ours was the one that was snake bitten. The first one was all right. But when I talk to a group like this, I say, well, the Hiroshima bomb was the first one, and it was dropped, but they didn't end the war. It took two to do it, and it was the Fat Man bomb in Nagasaki that was dropped, and that was the one that ended the war. So that's our claim to fame. So if we can start, it's a 20-minute film, then we'll have a question and answer period afterwards. And don't be afraid to ask me any questions, because I think I've got the answers, but I've been asked all kinds of questions already, so don't hesitate.
My name is Fred Olivi, and I was a co-pilot on the B-29 boxcar that dropped the second atomic bomb on Nagasaki. The living area of the 509th Composite Group on Tinian itself. You can see the field, North Field in the background there, and this is where we did all our work. This is the area of the 1st Ordnance Squadron that put the atomic bombs together. And there you see in the background the Philippine Sea with our Quonset huts in the foreground. Again, you see these Quonset huts that we lived in, and they were again very comfortable. And the ones that they assembled the atomic bombs with was an air-conditioned one, so they had the best of working conditions when they put the two bombs together. Now this is a group of the scientists that worked on the bomb. I think the average age turned out to be 38 years old. And there's General Farrell, and on his left, or on the screen left, is Captain Parsons, who was the weaponeer on board Enola Gay. And this is the little boy, the atomic bomb that was used on Hiroshima. And as you can see, it's being moved to the area of the pit, is being hoisted onto the wagon, put on the carrying wagon, and then it's taken out to the pit where it'll be loaded onto the front bomb bay of the Enola Gay. Here you're in the area of the pit now, and it's being taken out to the aircraft. Here's the pit with the bomb already in the pit. The aircraft, the Enola Gay, will be back over it, and the hydraulic hoist will put it into the front bomb bay where it'll be delivered to Japan. You see, this is a slender-looking atomic bomb. The Nagasaki bomb, Fat Man, will be quite different in comparison. Now you see the bomb being hoisted up into the front bomb bay just prior to closing the hydraulic doors, which close it immediately. They open. Here again is the shot of the Enola Gay being pulled to the hard stand. Here you see the Enola Gay's engines being started prior to takeoff and getting ready for the mission to Hiroshima. Now it's being taxied to the hard stand. You can see the R on the tail of the Enola Gay, and that was to throw the Japanese off as far as where the aircraft was stationed. In this case, it was supposed to have been stationed on Saipan because that was one of the bomb groups on Saipan. Now here is just before takeoff. You see Captain Parsons on the left, and Colonel Tibbets is the second from the left, and the other two scientists that were involved in working on the bomb. Here they're talking about probably what we're going to have to do prior to takeoff and going to Hiroshima. Remember, the takeoff was at 2:30 in the morning, so what you see now are the Klieg lights and the moving pictures taken of the group and the crew before they took off. And here is the name of the aircraft, the Enola Gay. It was named after Colonel Tibbets' mother, and that was put on just prior to takeoff the night before. Here you see Colonel Tibbets waiting for everybody to clear the way so they can take off. What you see here now is the Enola Gay coming back from its Hiroshima mission. It was a perfect mission. There was no problems. They took off, hit the primary target, and came back to Tinian about 2:15 or 2:30 in the afternoon. And this is his landing, and you will see him slow the aircraft down and make a turn so they could park it in the hard stand to which it's assigned. I think their flight duration was about 12 hours. Here now they're unloading their parachutes. One by one they'll be coming out. And here is Colonel Tibbets being decorated by General Spots. And he was given the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest award that our nation has to give to a military man for a deed well done, or a mission well done, as the case may be here with Colonel Tibbets. They exchanged salutes, and now Colonel Tibbets is being congratulated by the higher brass again on the island there. And here again are GIs that were involved with the bomb squadron and with the 393rd Bomb Squadron, and it had something to do with the dropping of the bomb.
This tape was made from 8mm and 16mm movie films that were taken by members of the Los Alamos Laboratory and the 509 Composite Group on Tinian, Marianas Islands, Pacific Ocean area, during the period 5 August to 8 August, 1945.
And here again are GIs that were involved with the bomb squadron and with the 393rd Bomb Squadron, and it had something to do with the dropping of the bomb. Here you see some of the other enlisted men of the Enola Gay getting their equipment and going off to their required places. Here's a shot of the ground crew and the flight crew together. And of course, I guess they wanted this for posterity too. And the third fellow kneeling from the left is Major Farabee, who dropped the bomb. This is the ground crew, and the fellow with the mustache is Captain King. And again, this is Bob Lewis, second from the left, was a co-pilot, and there he is again. And he was the one that flew co-pilot on the mission with Colonel Tibbets. And again, here's the big wheels, General Spots and General Farrell and the Navy Admiral. Is the Fat Man bomb that was used to be dropped on the city of Nagasaki. Nagasaki, of course, was not the primary target of the boxcar mission, but it was the secondary target. Because of the cloud coverage over Kokura, we couldn't drop the bomb as we were instructed to. We had to drop it visually, but because of the cloud coverage, the bombardier, Captain Behan, made 3 bomb runs in hopes of finding the aiming point. We couldn't do it, so our secondary target was Nagasaki, and this is the bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki on August 9th, 1945, and it weighed 10,000 pounds, and the ingredients in this one is plutonium. The ingredients on the Hiroshima bomb was uranium, and this bomb is about 4 times stronger than the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. So you can see in the matter of just 2 bombs, it was upgraded quite a bit as far as the destructive power was concerned. Here they are sealing the joints, so nothing can happen to the bomb. And here the dolly comes under the bomb for transport to the pit number 2, located on the field on Tinian. Now it's getting in position to be put close to the pit. So they'll roll it over the pit and put it on the hydraulic hoist and lower it as much as they can so the B-29 boxcar can be backed over it and put in the front bomb bay for its mission to, in this case, the secondary target, Nagasaki, not the primary of Kokura. B-29 boxcar will be backed over the pit under its own power with reversible propellers. There were 15 aircraft in the 393rd Bomb Squadron that were capable of reversing themselves and having reversible propellers and backing the aircraft up. And we were the only squadron in the entire Air Corps at the time that had the ability to do this with a B-29. That everything is a pretty tight fit. They had to make sure that their clearances were enough that it would clear the bomb bay doors and get the bomb into the front bomb bay without any problem. Flying to the target. And here you see the explosion of the Fat Man bomb over Nagasaki. And you can see the beginning of the telltale mushroom cloud that develops after the bomb is dropped. The bomb was dropped from 30,000 feet, and here you see the mushroom cloud coming up to our altitude, and here's another shot of it. It's expanding as it's going up to the full altitude of 50 or 60,000 feet. This shows the atomic cloud again, and what I remember was that it had a myriad of colors. It's a well-formed mushroom cloud, and there was a myriad of colors underneath the stem there, and the predominant color of the mushroom cloud was salmon pink, and that's the one that I'll never forget because I still have it in my mind's eye, and this was the overriding color that took care of showing the atomic bomb.
So that's how it was 56 years ago. A long time ago. So I'm ready for questions. Yes?
Is the B-29 still in production?
No, no. There's only one flying today, and that's the Fifi. There will be another one this coming year. They're working on it. And it'll be flyable. It'll make air shows like the Fifi does. But the only one that's flying now, and the only B-29 that's left, is the Fifi. Our aircraft boxcar that was used on the mission is at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. So if you want to go see it. And every time I see it, I pat it on the side and say, good girl.
How did this affect your life, and do you think we should use it again?
Absolutely, if it's necessary. We won't use it in Afghanistan, because can you imagine the publicity we get out of that? Poor backward nation like that, if we just dropped the atomic bomb on it, which would end the war, of course, it would be devastating, but we won't do that because it's taken an unfair advantage of poor country, even though they're fighting us, but what are you going to do? There are people like that in the world. Yes?
What was the main criteria that was used in determining what the primary target was going to be? Realizing that they couldn't go to the primary target, they were going to go to the secondary.
Every target that we had was a war target. When we dropped the bomb instead of Nagasaki, we were supposed to drop it in the center of the city, but because the bombardier Captain B only had 45 seconds with which to drop the bomb, because he's the one that saw the target. We were in clouds, and he had 45 seconds. And we dropped the bomb over the Urakami Valley, which was the war production center for the Japanese. That wasn't where it's supposed to be dropped, but because of the weather and the cloud coverage, that's what happened. But all the targets that we had, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Nagata, and one more, they were all military targets picked out by the government. Yes?
B-29 boxcar now in a museum?
Yeah, it's at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. And like I say, every time I see it, I pat it.
Go over there occasionally to pat it on the side?
Oh yeah, I take people down there, and I get inside, of course, and sit in the seat, but the seat's a little tighter now.
Yes, in the film there, they were showing how these ground crew was sealing the bomb. Did they ever have problems with cancer after that, if there was leaking?
A lot of cancer.
Yeah?
In both crews. In our crew, there's only 3 of us left. Major Sweeney, Captain Alberry, and myself. The flight engineer just died about 2 months ago. On Colonel Tibbets' crew, there's 3 also. It's Colonel Tibbets, the navigator, Van Kirk, and the tail gunner, senior citizen, anyway.
They probably didn't even realize that they would be affected by cancer.
Well,
at that
these
time,
were the
huh?
first of the kind, and most of the people that have died from cancer. In fact, the one that was with us in the crew, Lieutenant Beezer, his wife is suing the government because she says that caused his death. Yes?
Indian Island unoccupied?
Oh, no, it's just occupied. They've got gambling casinos there like in Las Vegas.
Is the airstrip still there?
Yeah, but just one runway, not 4. We had 4 runways, 8,500 feet long, and they were in the east-west direction. But they still use the field, the small airplanes do.
Did you ever land at Hiccup Field on the island?
Oh, sure.
Oahu?
Yeah, we had to when we came over. We landed at Hawaii, and then we flew to Kwajalein, and then we came into Tinian in the Marianas, which was going to be our home base back in 1945. Yes?
Sir, on both of those missions, there were no resistance that you encountered, is that correct?
Yes. There were no fighter escort. We had no fighter escort. We didn't need it because we operated from 30,000 feet.
Right.
And they shot at us over Kokura, but it was low and to the left and it was of no consequence. But because we operated at 30,000 feet, the Japanese Zeros, or the fighter planes, had a hard time getting up to us. Because we got the report that they were coming up to us from our radar operator, but we dropped the bomb, we continued on our mission, we dropped the bomb, and of course, I guess when they saw the mushroom cloud, he just didn't bother anymore because we never saw anybody after that.
Where were you stationed when the war ended, when the Japanese invaded?
Where was I?
Yes.
On Tinian. I stayed in Tinian until November of 1945, and then we came back to the States. Anybody else?
What was the altitude when you dropped the bomb?
30,000. 30,000 feet.
And how high could
It exploded at 1,840 feet above the ground, both of them. That's where you got the most blast effect and the most disastrous effect on the town itself and, of course, the people. I remember just before we dropped the bomb, just seconds before, I thought, well, we're going to kill a lot of elderly, innocent people, but that's the nature of the beast, and that's war for you. So I just put it out of my mind, though, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to be bothered with something like that being on my mind. But I just came into my mind, and I just put it out. Yes?
Is there a third bomb ready?
We had one more bomb at Wendover, Utah. We trained at Wendover, Utah, which is about 125 miles west of Salt Lake City in the salt flats out there. And when my pilot, Major Sweeney, and Colonel Tibbetts went to see LeMay on Guam, after the missions, just to report to him, the first thing he asked him, he says, have you got another one of those things? He called another one of those things. And of course, Colonel Tibbetts says, yes, sir, we do. We have one at Wendover. And General LeMay says, you get it over here, because the next one we use is going to be dropped on Tokyo, and Colonel Tibbetts was going to be the pilot again. But we didn't need it because they surrendered after the second bomb.
Sir, after the mission was completed, did you get any reply from the President?
No. We were kind of persons non grata. We weren't, usually when somebody does something as earth-shattering as ending the war, which we did, they get invited to the White House and they meet the President and they give him a little celebration. We never were. To this day, we never were invited to the White House, because I can understand why. It's a hot topic, and it's still controversial today. Some people think that we shouldn't have dropped the second atomic bomb. We shouldn't have dropped any atomic bomb. But of course, they don't know what they're talking about. They have to experience fighting, being a soldier, and fighting the enemy. And if they were there doing the same thing, I'm sure if they found out that our country had something that could end the war and save a lot of American lives, which it did, and we didn't do it, there would be a big hue and cry throughout the country. Why don't we use it? But it saved a lot of American lives, and not even counting Japanese lives. Because some of the youngsters that are running around today wouldn't be here today, because their grandfathers would have been part of the invasion of Japan on November 1st of 1945, which would have been the biggest invasion armada ever put together. Much bigger than the one of June 6, 1944 in Europe. And if their grandfather would have been part of that and he would have got killed or injured, they wouldn't be here today, because the grandfather wouldn't have had the father and they wouldn't have had the son or the girl that would be running around today. Yes?
Do you know how you were chosen to be the co-pilot?
Well, everything was done by Colonel Tibbetts. He's the one that had the final say. There were 1,500 men in the 509 composite group. And Tibbetts had a criterion that you had to meet certain qualifications. Well, just good pilot, and you had to have the character of not going bananas when you got into a tight spot. And among other things, of course. And I like flying, and I always have, and I still do. But he was the one that picked us, and I was surprised to find out that they didn't accept me, because I got my wings in August 4th, 1944, and I flew B-24s at Fort Worth, Texas, and from there I went to Lincoln, Nebraska, which was a pool for the entire Air Corps at the time. And from there, I got orders to go to Wendover, Utah, where we trained before we went overseas to Tinian in the Marianas. So it was quite a surprise to me that I was involved with anything like this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
How did they disassemble the bomb?
Well, that was done by the scientists. I can't tell you. But in our bomb, inside the casing that you saw, they had all kinds of mirrors and all kinds of wiring. From what I understand, I never saw the inside. But, and it was made of plutonium. Today they still make these atomic bombs with plutonium. The Hiroshima bomb was made with uranium, and to start a chain reaction with that one, they fired a projectile into the core of the uranium that started the chain reaction. And that's how that was done. I'm sure they have different ways of doing it today, but that was how it was done at the beginning. Yeah.
Can you tell us something about your career after you dropped the bomb?
Well, when I came out, I wanted to stay in and make it a career. So I stayed until 1947, and I wanted to make it a career and get a regular commission. And they sent me to counterintelligence. I didn't ask for the assignment. They sent me to counterintelligence in Baltimore, and I went to see the commanding officer, was a Colonel Cloyd at the time, and I says, Colonel, they got me in order to go into Baltimore as a counterintelligence agent, and I says, I don't want the assignment, I want to stay here and fly. And this was in Roswell, New Mexico now, where our home base was from returning from overseas. And he said, well, did you ask for the assignment? I said, no. He says, well, when do you have to report? I have 2 weeks to report. He says, well, I'll try to have the orders squelched. So we waited for 10 days, got no answer that they were squelched, and he says, well, you better report up to Baltimore. So I cleared the base at Roswell and flew up to Baltimore. And I was briefed by a captain there, and he told me what was involved with becoming a counter spy and all that kind of stuff. And he said that it was a 10-month course, and I would be going to school, of course, learning all the rudiments of being a counter spy. And then I said to him, I says, fine. I says, but where do I get my 4 hours flight time? 4 hours flight time meant that I got 50% more pay because it was a hazardous duty. And he shook his head and he says, well, no, he says, you're not going to fly. I says, I'll get my own 4 hours. You don't have to worry about getting the time. I'll do it myself. And he says, no, you don't understand, Lieutenant. He says, you're through flying altogether. I says, I'm through flying altogether if I take this assignment. He says, yeah. And I said, well, I got news for you. I'm not going to take the assignment because I worked my butt off to get wings. And I says it was one of the things I wanted since I was a youngster, reading about Baron von Richthofen, the Red Knight of Germany, and Rickenbacker, which was our ace of aces for the American side. And I said, you're not going to take it away like that. I said, you just put me in for discharge. So I waited 3 days, and then finally the orders did come through, rescinding my assignment up at Halliburton in Baltimore, and went back to Roswell. But by that time, everything was in turmoil. People were leaving the service, and if they would have offered a service, a commission to the 509th, the personnel of the 509th, 97% would have accepted a commission in the regular Air Force. But Colonel Tibbets went to see about that in Washington, but they never made the offer. So after that happened, everybody started to leave and go home and pick up their lives and go on. So to me, I stayed in the reserve until 1972, and I got to be Lieutenant Colonel, and I flew C-119s and C-46s up at O'Hare, And then the commanding colonel said, well, I don't know if we're going to be here next year because the government's not coming up with any money to support the reserve program. So I thought, well, I got to get something because I want to get my 20 years in to get a pension from the government, military pension. So there was a captain that came through looking for liaison officers for the Air Force Academy, where I would talk to the youngsters, the high school youngsters that wanted to become cadets in the Air Corps at the time. And that's what I did from about 62 until 72 when I retired. And then after that, I came out. I was a machinist at Pullman Standard Works, Pullman Car Works, that builds the sleepers. And I remember that I didn't like it before I went in service. I didn't like the idea of going every day doing the same thing. And I remember I told my mother that, my widowed mother, and of course she was old-fashioned Italian. And when I told her I didn't want to work in the shop, that was like the worst thing I could have said. And you got to work. I said, yeah, I'm going to work, but I don't want to work in the shop. So then I was asked to work for the city if I could be a draftsman at Pullman Tech. I got machine shop, electric shop, auto shop, drafting, architectural, we got a little bit of everything. And then we picked our own major when we got to be a sophomore. I said, I don't want to be a politician. So, but I was accepted with the city of Chicago in the bridge division. And I started in 1950. And in 1973, I became engineer in charge of all the bridges in the city of Chicago, if you're familiar with them. There were 50 of them, and I was in charge of that. And along with the bridge tenders, there were 40 bridge tenders that I had to schedule all the time. And I stayed there until 72 when I retired as a lieutenant colonel and engineer of bridge maintenance. And that's how I ended my career. Yes?
When you were in Roswell, New Mexico, did you have any knowledge or contact of the outer space people?
No, I was called by I got out in February of 47, and that happened in June, I think, or July of 47. And I was contacted by a scientist who was writing an article about that. And he says, were you at Roswell when the UFO came in, a forced landing, and they had a UFO, a person from the other planet? And I said, no, I had already left. But had I been there, I would have snooped around until I either got arrested to find out exactly if it was true, because that was quite a thing. And I certainly would have tried my darndest to get to look at that angel.
Well, they say people have souvenirs of it, so.
Yeah, I don't know. But I wasn't there, otherwise I would have done something.
Commander Sweeney and Colonel Tibbetts still with you?
Yeah, Colonel Tibbetts is about 86, 87 years old. He's in fairly good shape. He still gets around. He makes his little appearances throughout the country when he's invited to. And my pilot, Major Sweeney, who got to be a 2-star general, and in the National Guard. But he's not doing so well. He's got congestive heart failure, and he's got cancer of the prostate. And
How old is he?
he's about 84. I'm 80 years old. I was the token Italian on the crew, and I was the youngest crew member at the time.
Did you any?
Let's just take one more question, then we're okay.
Did you at any time meet General Douglas MacArthur?
They kept everything away from MacArthur as much as they could, because being the way he was, and he was the commanding general of the theater in the South Pacific, if he had known about it at the beginning, he'd want to have his hands in there to have something to say about what went on. But he was deliberately left out until he had to be told when we were there and what we were doing there. Because I remember we were there for 2 weeks and we weren't flying any missions against the Japanese, and the other bomb crews noticed this and they said, what are you guys doing here? You're supposed to be flying like us. Well, we knew what we were doing there, but they didn't. We had to go to lead crew school, and we had to learn about coming back into the island, leaving the island. There were certain procedures that you had to go through. And but finally, when we were through with that and we started our mission, then they found out that we were the ones that had the atomic bomb. Well, then it was all right.
At this back table over here, and if you have some more questions, because I'm sure we could probably go on here for another hour or two, but he'll take questions individually. And also, he's got a copy of his book. He's got several copies of his book, in case you're interested. Decision of Nagasaki, the mission that almost failed. You may want, if you want to ask him some other questions during dessert, feel free to do so. So thanks again, Colonel Lee.
My pleasure to be here.